Imagine tuning in expecting Yandy and Mendeecees to have a quiet heart-to-heart, only to see sparks fly so quickly that the room seems like it might blow up. Fans are describing what was supposed to be a casual sit-down to clear the air as one of the most shocking confrontations in hip-hop and love history. Every statement felt like a dagger rather than a healing tool. From a modest water bottle to a harsh tone, every little detail and every tense glance spiraled into something much larger. The audience was astounded by what they saw, which began with tiny. The deeper wounds of their marriage were rapidly revealed by disappointments, revealing years of spoken conflict and latent resentments. Mendeecees became increasingly defensive, claiming he had been battling for them all along, while Yandy, who was clearly worn out, demanded explanations and effort. In a matter of seconds, the atmosphere changed from awkward to combustible, leaving everyone wondering whether this was just another argument or if their marriage had reached a breaking point. According to insiders, even the crew behind the cameras was stunned into silence by the intensity of the fallout. Thus, the issue now is, did we just witness the live breakdown of Yandy and Mendeecees' romance? With an unpleasant stillness that was already heavier than the humid air in the room, Yandy and Mendeecees sat down opposite one another. The goal was straightforward. Before traveling to Puerto Rico with the rest of the crew, they hoped to finally get on the same page. However, it was evident from the first conversation that peace would not be easy to achieve. The stress in their voices was audible. The sound of each sentence was not a bridge, but rather a challenge. What supporters thought would be a touching discussion about family and love turned into one of the most brutal altercations in modern history. Yandy began, "You got real funky with me," in a low, piercing voice that seemed to be challenging him to deny it. Mendeecees retorted nearly immediately, "I didn't get weird. You got funky." Rather than apologizing or saying "I'm sorry," you simply continued that nasty vibe. The remarks struck more forcefully than they ought to have. Spectators were aware that this was more than a little miscommunication or a glass of water. Everything underneath was at stake. Yandy leaned forward, her voice brimming with frustration. "It isn't affectional energy. It's not pliable. I don't need it from you. It seems like you're prepared to fight me rather than fight for me whenever something comes up." Viewers were shocked by just one sentence, since it addressed the very wound that so many followers had observed. Yandy had been putting up a brave front and publicly defending their marriage for months. The fissures were growing behind the scenes. Means, who frequently boasted he prided himself on being tough and unconcerned, but he was unaware of how deeply that same toughness was piercing her soul. It was too little too late for Yandy, but he tried to soften his tone by saying, "Maybe you took it the wrong way. I apologize. Let's not make little things into big things." Her eyes were full of tears as she shook her head. "It goes beyond little details. Little things keep piling up until they overwhelm me. I'm sick of feeling like I'm responsible for this marriage." That sentence was like a knife piercing the room. At home, fans were in disbelief. Social internet was immediately inundated with comments. "This goes deeper than we anticipated. Wow. Yandy appears so exhausted. And the end is just getting started." The irony hurt. What started off as a peaceful gathering was actually exposing the flaws in their relationship. Mendeecees tensed. "I have also been fighting. I fight every single day, even though you can't see it. I've been battling for us ever since we met." Yi softly slammed her fist against the table. It was desperation, not rage. "I don't feel that, even though you say it. I fail to see it. You just appear when it's convenient. But I feel like I've been the only one out here fighting, defending, and making sacrifices." His tone became stern. "You're creating imaginary issues. You're making trivial matters into conflicts. I can't continue like this. The bull is not something I have time for." The whole tone changed with that. Online fans did a wonderful job of describing it. Her face broke when he said that. She sat back in her chair, trying to suppress her sadness and rage as her lips quivered. She muttered, "I cannot be the only one engaged in combat. I'm exhausted from struggling for too long." This was no longer merely a dispute. Years of animosity were leaking forth. All of the times Yandy had stood up for him in front of friends, supported the family during his absence, and felt isolated in the partnership all came crashing down at once. And she encountered obstacles in place of assurance. Then the shocking news arrived. Yandy disclosed that rather than getting information about him directly from him, she had been getting it from others. "What does it say about us if I walk into a room and hear strangers talking about my husband?" What does that indicate about our level of trust? Supposed to have? Mendeecees' whole attitude changed. He tensed up. His tone sharpened. He became more defensive. You always give the impression that I'm concealing something. You're usually so protective. It's so quick to exaggerate it. However, fans were aware of what they were seeing. Traditional deflection. He turned the tables on her, refusing to help her. It was cruelly ironic. He was accusing her of being the issue while she was pleading for love and honesty. Commentary exploded on the internet. Some supporters took Yandy's side and referred to her as the family's pillar, who was worthy of better. Others took Mendeecees' side, saying he was sick of being held responsible for everything. Despite the heated argument across multiple timelines, one thing remained evident. One of the season's most heated scenes was the sit-down. Yandy's face showed how tired she was. Her eyes were filled with disappointment as she gazed at him. I have stood up for us in front of everyone. When no one else seemed to be willing to carry us, I did. But I need you to defend us now. I'm no longer able to do it alone. You don't even see what I've done. I've been in this fight since day one, Mendeecees muttered as he leaned back and shook his head, but the words had lost their meaning. Supporters said it sounded like two voices echoing, but never making it to the other side of a canyon. The quiet that ensued was eerie. She searched for anything as she glanced at him. Any indication that he would get softer, come forward, and accept her suffering. However, he turned his head away. Those in attendance perceived it as a breaking point. The love that previously bound them together appeared to be hidden beneath layers of pride and fatigue, not because of the water bottle or the defensive remarks. At that point, Yandy blurted out the most devastating line. She said, in a scarcely audible voice, I feel like I've been fighting alone for far too long, and perhaps this marriage is already ended. If I'm the only one still having arguments. Mendeecees remained silent, his face unreadable as the camera lingered on him. No argument they had ever had could compare to the silence. The audience was unable to turn away. It was more than a scene. Real time, unadulterated pain was leaking out. This is too real. I can't watch. Was one of the tweets made by fans. If they can't make it, who can? Within minutes, hashtags were trending. Additionally, the video went viral on all platforms. What started out as a reconciliation ended up revealing that their marriage may already be in danger. Following Yandy's last remarks, there was a pause that persisted in the atmosphere like an immobile storm cloud. Perhaps she had been the only one arguing for too long, and perhaps their marriage was in trouble, something that neither spouse ever wants to publicly acknowledge. Already in a precarious situation, Mendy sat there with his lips squeezed. I had a blast last night, perhaps harmless. However, it's less networking and more Netflix and betrayal when those messages are purportedly from Kirk to Kendra. Additionally, the date was just too coincidental with one of Kirk's enigmatic business travels where no one pays any attention. Never comes upon a real invoice. And when this type of tea starts to leak, you know how fans feel. Fingers on Twitter went nuts. I need front row seats if Jock and Kirk are fighting for Kendra, one person commented. Kirk couldn't stay faithful if before the moment ever aired. The meme began to circulate, a picture of Jock shouting with the caption, when you realize your bro might be your stepson's new stepdaddy, savage. You locked him in a monastery without Wi-Fi. And yet, true. However, it went more than that. Yes, there were alleged insiders. The same dubious people who somehow always have the most juicy information began to say that Jock had already confronted Kendra behind the scenes. They said she denied everything and swore fervently that nothing ever happened. But the problem was that her denial included just enough cameras zoomed in on Kirk's twitching smile, Jock's flaring nostrils, Rashadida's side-eye, so sharp it could cut through any hesitation. Just enough of that "how dare you ask me" attitude that Jock couldn't shake the doubt. Because in LHATL's world, even the strongest denial feels like an admission. Cut glass. Every second was pure reality TV gold, but Kirk's attempt to spin it rather than confronting the accusation directly. He began mumbling about trust and brotherhood and why would I ever do that made it even better or worse, depending on your moral compass. This is essentially code for, I don't have an explanation, so let me divert your attention with ambiguous phrases and hope you forget. But let's face it, nobody forgot. In fact, When fans retrieved old video of Kirk and Kendra being a bit too friendly at previous events, that hug that lasted a beat too long, they began to dig. That chuckle that seemed more like flirtation than friendship, all of a sudden, every video turned into proof, every grin became suspicious, and the timeline was disorganized. People began to speculate that this might not have been a one-time rumor. Perhaps this has been simmering for months, covertly amidst the turmoil of other people's scandals. It gets deliciously messy from here. According to reports, an unnamed buddy of the show leaked that the producers truly possess material that was never shown. Video of Kirk and Kendra standing a little too tall during an after-party, speaking in each other's ears. Near. Was it a harmless incident? Perhaps. Did it put Jock into a tailspin? Of course. Additionally, if the leak is accurate, the producers held off on releasing it until the ideal time. I'm not sure. A trip explosion in Puerto Rico. Is it a coincidence? Please. On this show, nothing happens by accident. Social media, meanwhile, was a battlefield. Team Kirk against Team Jock. According to some admirers, Jock was exaggerating and allowing his fears to destroy friendships. According to some, Kirk should have known better than to even glance in Kendra's direction because he had earned his terrible reputation. Conspiracy theorists then suggested that perhaps the producers had staged the entire incident to increase viewership. Here's the worst part though. The genuine rage on Jock's face, even if it was manufactured, wasn't acting. That man sincerely thought his friend had gone too far. Not to be overlooked in all of this is Rashida. Rashida, who has endured years of Kirk's foolishness, is unfortunate to be thrust into yet another scandal that she didn't cause. The thing about messy men is that they don't just ruin their own lives, they drag everyone else along with them. You could almost hear her thinking, not again, not in Puerto Rico, not with cameras rolling, down with them. And Jock wasn't going to stand by and said, "Tell me straight, Kirk, did you or did you not spend the night with my wife?" That was followed by awkward laughter, shuffling, silence, and the deflection of the iconic Kirk move. Man, are you really going to let these rumors to separate us? Are you really going to believe the streets over me? That is, in my opinion, the weakest defense. Perhaps you should reevaluate your life decisions, if the streets are more credible than you. And while Kirk was busy trying to, the internet was already holding court, with users claiming to have seen Kirk and Kendra together on Instagram Lives, TikToks analyzing every facial expression from the program, and Twitter threads referencing evidence from months prior. The most damning response came from Jock himself, who didn't just stop at the accusation, no. He doubled down and began enumerating all the shady things Kirk had ever done, including every time he'd been caught in a lie and every time he'd embarrassed Rashida. The investigation was conducted by fans who treat love and hip-hop like it's CSI Atlanta. Even if everyone wanted to laugh it off, he had a point. Kirk's history was essentially one big highlight reel of treachery. If you can do it to her, why wouldn't you do it to me? He barked, and the room fell silent. Was this really so absurd? And then it dawned on them that Puerto Rico would not only be chaotic, but also disastrous, since once you accuse a man of having an affair with your wife, there's no turning back to have a drink by the pool. No. This was so here we are in paradise, surrounded by palm trees and turquoise lakes, seeing two mature men sever years of friendship over whispers, screenshots, and late nights. Personal. This was war. The other people on that trip were merely collateral damage. If you thought this was terrible, wait until you hear about the consequences. Rumors. And to be honest, it's the kind of mayhem we adore, because hip-hop and love aren't about the music or the beaches. They're about mistrust, betrayal, and the kind of ugly drama that keeps you hooked to the screen. And just when you thought things couldn't get much worse, they did. Because after Jock, accusations are one thing, but when the dust settles, someone is going to have to pay the price. And believe me, the bill in Puerto Rico is going to be more than anyone bargained for. The villa fell hushed as he dropped his last bomb. But the calm was short-lived, because what transpired was not merely a disagreement, but the destruction of years of supposed brotherhood in front of cameras. Friends, strangers, and millions of people at home. You're letting producers fool you, bro. You think I'd sacrifice my wife, my family, and my business for one night? Reality TV no more. This was reality with a capital, or Kirk trying to save what little dignity he had left. The irony of that statement, however, was more devastating than Jock's accusations because, let's face it, Kirk has demonstrated over the years that he will risk all of that for much less. The man could trademark infidelity. A one-night stand, please. You think I'm dumb? You think I don't see the pattern? My wife came to Puerto Rico, meant to unwind, supposed to settle down. But Jock wasn't having it. He got up, chest puffed out, and paced like a man planning a fight or an appointment with a divorce lawyer. Enjoy. And now I hear from everyone but you. What happened? And you're meant to be my brother? Every word felt like a nail in the coffin of their friendship. Rashida, furious, finished sitting there with her arms folded, her lips pressed together, and her eyes rolling. Sakti could have used a lot of energy to power the villa's electricity since it was no longer just about Kendra. It was about Kirk dragging everyone into his mess yet again, and the expression she gave him this time was one of tiredness rather than wrath. The sort of expression that indicates, I already know how this story ends, and we've been here before. Fans weren't just watching though. They were taking sides, writing dissertations and comment sections, and coming up with hashtags like #J versus Kirk and #KendraGate. Meanwhile, the internet was going crazy. Theories abound on Reddit. Did Kirk and Kendra actually hook up? Was Jock exaggerating? Or was this whole commotion a well-planned ploy by producers who are aware that drama sells? But here's the twist. People were emotionally invested, whether it was true or not, and perception is crucial in the world of hip-hop and love. However, the aftermath went beyond memes and fan battles, as rumors began to circulate that producers were thinking about turning this drama into a separate plotline. Off camera, however, things were much darker. According to sources, Jock and Kendra got into a heated argument later that night, with Jock demanding the truth and Kendra sticking to her story. The entire new season focused on Jock's trust issues, Kendra's denials, Kirk's reputation, and Rashida's silent suffering. But Jock's anxiety was only heightened by her quietness, hesitancy, and little cracks in her voice, and once suspicion sets in, it doesn't go away. Kirk used the traditional PR tactic of damage management, telling anybody who would listen that Jock was exaggerating and that rumors were really rumors. But Kirk's history speaks louder than words. You can't keep claiming innocence for very long until people start to treat you as the wolf that screamed out. But in this instance, the wolf wasn't just coming, had already consumed the entire trip. Online fans dug even further, locating proof from months prior, including candid photos, old comments, and suspicious